Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and it is Booktober, the time of year for pumpkin spice everything. Pumpkin spice coffee, pumpkin spice popcorn, pumpkin spice ice cream, pumpkin spice candles, pumpkin spice... so much. Pumpkin spice everywhere! Oh, right, and we talk about books, particularly books from the traditional publishing space. Booktober is brought to you by the local library. Please patronize your local library. They depend on you to do circulation. And hey, free books. Try before you buy. Save lots of money. Yay! Alright, so last time we were talking about adult fantasy books. So we did some traditional types of adult fantasy, fairy tale, a cozy, and then we went into some kind of adult fantasy paranormal romance stuff, which all really good, all really fun books, except that one book, which we won't name. So today we are going to do a couple more adult fantasy books, and then we're going to get into adult science fiction. I make it sound so like salacious, and it's not really salacious, but you know, middle grade, young adult, adult, these are just age categories. Okay, so the first books we're going to talk about are the Evenfall Riches Bed and Breakfast books by Orly Wallace. The first is called In the Company of Witches, and the second one is called When the Crow's Away. So these are fantasy, cozy mysteries. Think practical magic means Lillian Jackson Braun of the Cat Who series with Quilloin and the two Siamese cats. Yes, I have read all of them. Loved them. Okay. So, I'm working on some cozy mysteries myself, some cat girls solving mysteries in a fantasy world for young adults, like in the style of Nancy Drew and Scooby-Dooby-Doo and the Hardy Boys. And so I wanted to go pick up a bunch of cozy mysteries to read up on how they go. And the great thing about my little tiny town library is they have a lot of cozy mysteries. Cozy mysteries is like this new, well, not quite so new, but in the last 10 years has really taken off as a quote-unquote pulp genre. Just everything. We went to a local festival this past weekend, and I'm doing this in the beginning of October, so a couple weekends ago, and the library was having a book sale, and I was looking at the books. They picked up a couple and they were showing them to people, and I picked them up after they did, and they were crocheting cozy mysteries. And my mother really liked the embroidery cozy mysteries, so I was like, maybe Mother would like the crocheting ones. She's into crocheting, and they're like foisting them on me. Take them, give them to your mother. Because these are my friends who run the book sale, always good. And so I took them to my mother, and the crochet one has actually crochet patterns in it and recipes. And so these cozy mysteries are like a really big deal. You can get ones that revolve around Amish country. You can get ones that revolve around bakeries and wedding dress people, and I don't know. They all have these really cute titles. So this is in the same vein of the really cute titles with cozy bed and breakfast mysteries, and because that's a whole brand of thing, and now we add magic. So In the Company of Witches it starts out with how the Warren Riches, they own a bed and breakfast, and they live in New England in a town called Evenfall, which very typical. You're either like in New England, rural Ohio, or Michigan, and they are known to be very helpful to their guests. And Bryn has special gifts that have been kind of on the fritz since her husband died. and somebody dies in the bed and breakfast, and her aunt is Nora, who is kind of crotchety and outspoken, and the local kind of, she's very into growing plants and knowing about poisons and stuff, but she is pinned for the murder. They are suspicious of her because Constance Graves, the woman who died, was, also very crotchety and very outspoken, and so Bryn has to clear her aunt's name and hopefully regain her powers as she does so. So Bryn used to be able to talk to ghosts, and after her husband died, which there is the limitation, she can't actually talk to his ghost. But after her husband died, she has not been able to see or talk to ghosts. She has just been in such deep grief about the loss of her husband, which is totally, completely understandable. So she lives with her two aunts and an uncle. Her uncle kind of lives in the attic, and he doesn't leave because he can see the future, and he doesn't like being able to see the future. And her aunt works with one aunt works with plants, and the other aunt works with food. Now, so you can see how this is kind of a practical magic thing. And so she has to solve the mystery of Constance's death, who died in their bed and breakfast, and has to clear her aunt's name. And this involves, running around town and talking to all the little local neighbors, including the one that next door neighbor who's like a paranormal ghost hunter who never sees paranormal things or ghosts. And he's got like cameras all over his house, and going to the graveyard and going to the library and the local bookstore and finding out more about the B&B's history and the history of the town. And so it's really, really fun. It's kind of, and you start digging into the people's past who might have killed Constance and why they killed Constance. And there are little clues scattered throughout so that when you get to the end, it's, oh, that makes sense. Yay! And there isn't any real thriller aspect to it that I felt. That is one of the things that really can kind of get with these cozy mysteries, is a lot of them turn into thrillers. I am not a fan of thrillers. They get my anxiety too tensed up. So if your mystery starts turning into a thriller, I'm more of a, I guess I'm more of a Poirot fan than a Sherlock Holmes fan. I don't want my mystery person to be in constant fear of their life. So it's more of a mystery versus a thriller, which is enjoyable. So after they solve the mystery of who actually killed Constance, the second book, When the Crow's Away, she's starting to feel more comfortable with her powers again, and the ghost of a local sweet shop owner shows up and claims he's been murdered, and he needs her to solve her murder because it's the worst kept secret in Evenfall that this family is full of witches and wizards, and that she can talk to ghosts, that she can pass on information from the other side. And so this local sweet shop guy shows up, and he's very insistent that he's been murdered. And so she has to try to reclaim more of her powers and find out if this guy's actually been murdered, or was it really a terrible accident. And we also find out more about Aunt Nora's fascination with poisons, and that there's a garden society in town that she's not part of it. Oh my god, that's awful. And like, all the politics of I wouldn't call it a small town. I'd call it kind of like a mid-sized small town. A small town to me is like someplace with only one stoplight, and I think they have more than one stoplight in this town. But like a mid-sized town with, a couple grocery stores and a bunch of businesses, and you have your downtown string of shops where everybody goes, that because, or they're either tourist attractions or they're just like these quaint little twisty shop things like coffee shops and stuff like that. So once again, cozy mystery, no real thriller aspects to it. Learn more about the town and more about the people in the town. She, you know, this one's a little more complicated than the first one. It's not, so you have to really pay attention to all the clues to know if you know what's going on. A lot of times these books have like this last minute clue that puts everything together. She doesn't, and so what's really nice is she doesn't do that. So there are clues sprinkled throughout it that could mean to different things. Now, what's really sad about this is the second one leaves off on a cliffhanger, because there's actually witches and there are witch hunters, and magic doesn't work on witch hunters and, you know, stuff like that. And it leaves off on a cliffhanger about like the witch like with the witch hunter guy or whatever. And I was like, oh no, I need the next one. And I was like, went and I looked, and there isn't a next one. It's unfortunate, but Early got sick, and she really wants to continue, so I hope she does continue soon, because for cozy mysteries, I'm giving these a 5 out of 5. Because they're really fun, and if you liked the movie Practical Magic, not the book, this is the movie version Practical Magic, or if you like any type of cozy mystery like Lillian Jackson Moran, and you don't want a thriller, like a really nervy thriller thing to your mystery, these are really good. And she has a couple other series as well of cozy mysteries, but they don't have like the fantasy elements, so I'm like, I don't really need that. You know? But so once again, the titles are In the Company of Witches and When the Crows Away. So really cute cozy mysteries. All right, let us move on to science fiction. If you're wondering, Jenny, what you have very broad reading taste. Yes, I like reading different genres within fantasy and science fiction. It's fun. Okay? I like seeing how different people do things and how different things people put them together. So what we're going to start with is Lindsay Ellis, Axiom's End. So yes, that Lindsay Ellis, the YouTuber, I was curious about her book, and it was in the system, so I ordered it and read it. So in Axiom's End, let's do a quick show. Cora is a young woman who has dropped out of college for linguistics, and her father is like this big conspiracy theorist, and he's been divorced from the family, and they're trying to stay out of it. But when there's an alien that shows up in your living room and you have to kind of go on the run from various government agencies, it's a little hard to stay away from the conspiracy theory aspect of it. And so she goes on the run. She tries to find out what her aunt has been doing. Like, there was somebody in her family working with these linguistics, trying to communicate with these aliens, and it's part of this secret project, and she's got to find out what's going on and protect the alien, or the alien needs to protect her, one of the two, and are there different aliens who are trying to kill the other aliens, and so on and so forth. Big conspiracy theories, whatever. Now, I'm giving this like a 3.5 out of 5. And I know my summary is probably not that great. The summary on Goodreads is actually not that great either. The reason why I'm giving this 3.5 out of 5 is because this book could not decide whether it wanted to be soft sci-fi or hard sci-fi. The first half of the book is soft science fiction. It doesn't rely on any type of science. I mean, it's just make it up as you go along. It's very soft. Then the second half of the book turns into hard science fiction when this girl Cora's coupled classes in linguistics makes her the quote-unquote expert to talk with the aliens, or the aliens only want to talk with her, whatever. So then Lindsay tries to push linguistic rules into the book. In the first half of the book, because it's soft science fiction, there are letters and web-page articles, news reports being inserted alongside the narrative story about the aliens and the secret conspiracy theories and, and everything, which makes the book feel a little pretentious. Now, I'm noticing this is a trend or something in science fiction fantasy recently. I've come across this in a couple other books, and we're going to probably talk about it a little later on in the video too. But it really is kind of pretentious, and it pulls you out of the story at the same time. They're trying to present backstory, but it's exposition that you might not even be interested in, which could probably be woven in later in the story without having to use these news articles and blah, blah, blah. So I was when I got to the end, I was very conflicted over the book because I really liked the beginning half, and then the second half, teenager, young 20-something in a very kind of emotional situation, so of course she's making bad decisions. And then there came the relationship between Cora and the alien. And because there were no other relationships in the book presented as uplifting, huggy type of relationships, the relationship between Cora and the alien came off as very romantic. And I can't tell if that was intentional or not. And I know Lindsay had a hard time selling this book because of that relationship with the aliens, and I know she did eventually find somebody who was willing to buy it and put it in front of publishers despite that, but it really felt kind of weird. I know what she was going for because Cora was going through such a difficult time. Yes, you need a hug, but at the same time, because there was no humans doing the hugging, the alien came off very much as a love interest rather than a platonic companion. So very weird. And I have heard rumors that this was a Transformer fanfiction turned into a book, and I wouldn't quite discount. So if this new book knew what it wanted to be, I'd give it a higher rating, but it doesn't, so 3.5 out of 5. Alright, let's move on to the next book, which I have is... Alright, so we're going to talk about 3 books from Becky Chambers next. So Becky Chambers had a kind of breakout novella with A Psalm the Wild-Built, which is the Monk and Robot series. And then she also has some longer novels called the Wayfarer series. And I'm going to talk about the Wayfarers first, and then we're going to talk about A Psalm the Wild-Built. I haven't read the second Monk and Robot one yet. It is on my to-read list. So the first books that I'm going to talk about is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and A Closed in Common Orbit. So these are very slice of life science fiction books. So if you don't like slice of life type of books, these might not be for you. Alright, so let's talk about this. So there is a crew of humans and aliens who work together on a very large spaceship with an artificial intelligence unit to drive wormholes from one section of the galaxy to another. And they have recently taken on a new cruise, Mary. crew member named Rosemary Harper as to be their accountant to make sure that they're doing everything correctly and abiding by all the regulations. Very important. And Rosemary has some secrets that, you know, she's worried about getting out because her family is back on Mars and she's trying to get away from it. And the rest of the crew is kind of this eclectic group of people, and their job is to drive a wormhole from this planet, this planetary system with a new group of aliens that the Galactic, you know, Alliance or whatever it is, the big group of people, governments working together, are trying to create a treaty with and create trade with. So their job is to go there, set up a bunch of equipment, and then use their ship to carve out a wormhole to create a trade route that is stable so they can trade with these aliens. So everything, you start learning about the people in the ship, you start learning about the ship, you learn about the AI, you're learning about the cultures of the different aliens and the different, you know, people on the ship. And it all kinds of, and you're learning about how they're making this wormhole, and it all kind of comes together at the end of the story when they are making the wormhole, and, you know, how can things go horribly wrong, and what will happen if things go horribly wrong. So the overall plot arc is, you know, is there. It's solid. It's a very solid one. So 5 out of 5 for the plot arc. And the character arcs, though, are a little less so, I guess. So because it's this almost low stakes kind of thing, you know, it's not going to be the end of the universe if they don't do the wormhole properly. But the people, you're on board of this ship, and the people are kind of all, their personalities, whether or not they jive or not, you know, they have to figure out how to avoid people if you don't really like them over long periods of time, and everybody's secrets. There's like this kind of conflict tension set up that, you know, Rosemary's secrets are going to, you know, be a bad thing, and, you know, there's also kind of like this xenophilia relationship set up between Rosemary and one of the pilots of the ship. And there's also a kind of a romance between one of the mechanics and the artificial intelligence. So there's a whole bunch of character stuff set up. And some of it is done well, and some of it is done not so well. So, so some of it has some false tension there, you know, you think it's going to blow up, and then it kind of fizzles out, and everything's okay. And some things do not fizzle out and are not okay. So, so 4.5 out of 5 overall for the Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I'm not entirely sure it was necessary also to, at the very end of the book, add the alien point of view, because it kind of, I don't know, it didn't feel kind of necessary. It felt like those could have been cut, you know, and they could have just attacked out of the blue, so that way nobody really knew what was going on. But it's also kind of one of those, once again, it's a slice of life story, so I can understand the temptation and the desire to put it in there, either to pad out the word count or to be like, I want to, you know, I think it feels more satisfying if you know exactly why they're attacking or whatever. But 4.5 out of 5. Good book. Then the direct sequel is A Closed and Common Orbit. And now we don't pick up with the ship. The ship is going on to do more work, and, you know, their story is kind of done there. What we do is we pick up with the fact that there's an artificial intelligence unit, and her brain, her programming has been put into what they call a body kit. So instead of being the ship, she is now restricted to having the limitations of a human body. So A Closed and Common Orbit, it's even more character driven than The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. So it's very much talking about artificial intelligence, how close our artificial intelligence is to humans, what happens, you know, how can she learn to accept her new limitations? Can she learn to accept her new limitations? How does her brain work versus a human brain or an alien brain? And we learn yet again about more new alien cultures and stuff like that. So it's really kind of, it just picks up in a different section of the universe that has the kind of, you know, you've met these people before during the first book, but now you get to have their stories and learn about their stories. Now, Closed and Common Orbit has two timelines going on. There is the, once again, there's the plot part, and the plot part is the human character Pepper and her friend Blue are trying to find the ship that they used to escape the planet they lived on, and the artificial intelligence in that ship that raised Pepper, and that's very important to Pepper. So you're going to be reading Pepper's in Blue, story in Blue, when Blue shows up, of how she was raised by an artificial intelligence and how she escaped her planet, and then, you know, how this new intelligence, artificial intelligence in the body kit is going to help her rescue her artificial intelligence program mother type of thing. So the two stories are kind of interwoven together, and if you don't like flashback story types of things, I would suggest like reading them separately. Like if you want to, you know, go read all the Pepper parts first, and then read the Lovelace stuff, then read the present day stuff, or you can, you know, try doing it the other way around. I don't know. It didn't put me off, but I know some people it might put off. So just in case of that. This one was it didn't suffer sequelitis, thank God. And so I would give this one a 5 out of 5 because the character arcs were better set up. There was more tension and things like that. Less false conflict type of thing. So very enjoyable. Now, what the book that kind of put her on the map, though, was called A Psalm for the Wild-Built, which is The Monk and the Robot, and it's a novella. It's about, a quarter an inch thick, whatever. It's about 40,000 to 50,000 words. It's not that long. And this one I'm going to also give a 5 out of 5. And it really does talk a lot about purpose versus spark. So in the book, the robots had left, you know, the colony a very long time before to go figure out their spark or purpose. You know, they were never seen again. And now this is a monk. He has this desire to hear crickets kind of thing. And he decides, you know, at first he decides to leave where he is as a monk, and he decides to become a tea monk, which means he's going out to all these different villages, and he's serving tea, and he's listening to, listening to people, to help them, have somebody they can talk to. And for a while, this satisfies him. He's pedaling between villages, and he's learning how to make these different types of tea, and he's helping people out. And then he thinks this is his purpose, this is his reason, diatra, his reason to live, and then it becomes less of a purpose, and so he goes out into the wilderness to, once again, try to find the crickets, because he still hasn't found his crickets, and he meets a robot. And he and the robot have these discussions about, is this the purpose of life? Is this what is the spark? What, makes me get up in the morning? And it also kind of gives this discussion of, when you are somebody that everybody's coming to for advice or for comfort, who in the end comforts you? And it was just a really kind of beautiful little story. I really enjoyed it. So a 5 out of 5. I thought it, was just a lovely little thing, and even the crickets showed up. A nightingale sings and Berkeley Square. So if you kind of like that. The last book I'm going to talk about today is called Machinehood by S.B. Divya. And this is a book about artificial intelligence again. Something very prominent to our times. And this one's pretty dense. This one took me a couple days to get through. Welga is a bodyguard. She's ex-special forces. Everybody has their own like little artificial intelligence monitors, and hers is built into her body versus being a computer, a separate computer. And because she was special forces, and they did that for her. And there's a whole bunch of terrorism going on because robots and artificial intelligence have taken over so much of our society in this future that people have to do gig work for jobs. And Welga is trying to protect the people who make things that, nanobots for immunizations and things like that. That's her job, and people are trying to kill them. And now Welga has to find out, is this related to stuff that happened back during her special forces days? Is this related to something about a spaceship or a space platform where her partner actually wants to go live? And or is this something else entirely? So there's kind of like this little mystery set up in there. Is something going on with these corporations? Should she actually be protecting the people in the first place? Now, I really wanted to give this a 5, but I can't. This is a 3. There are 2 different points of view in this book, Welga and her sister-in-law. And you're going to notice that the sister-in-law doesn't really show up in the summaries. But Welga and her sister-in-law is a designer of these kind of drugs type of things and a tester. And her sister-in-law has friends that, that are kind of hackers that play video games to test these things. Don't ask me. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna roll with it. That's the rules of the world. I'm going with it. So we had the point of view of Welga, and we had the point of view of the sister-in-law. And the sister-in-law does end up doing something important, something very brave, and she does have a plot line that's also kind of important to today's politics and climate, because so trigger warnings for an abortion, and her husband gets very angry about it, and they have this big fight about it because her husband is Catholic, but he reads evangelical Protestant, which is a very easy thing to do if you're not quite sure of the differences. And then her sister-in-law is a Buddhist. So they're having a conflict of, religion. And I was very angry at the husband because it was well written. But the husband to me would have made more sense as an evangelical Protestant rather than a Catholic. So she does something very brave and very important towards the end of the story to help expose all this. And okay, but it wasn't half the book brave and important. And as we are reading the book, again, we have these kind of newspaper clippings and diary episodes and cuts out of web pages and stuff like that, which was to give us kind of exposition, backstory for another major player, somebody who turns out to be a major player in what is going on. So I got to the end of the story, which also makes the story feel, once again, kind of pretentious, and it's exposition, it's telling and not showing. So I got to the end of the story, and we had 50 pages left for Welga to solve all these many problems that were going on. And I was like, she's not going to be able to stick this landing. And she didn't. What we really needed was the third, if we're going to do separate points of view with Welga and the sister, we needed the point of view of the supposedly pacifist, neo-Buddhist, whatever it was, up on the space station. We needed her point of view to know why she changed her mind, because Welga changing her mind wasn't very well thought out either. It wasn't really well played out. So I got to the end of the story and I just felt so unsatisfied. Like, it was well thought out world building. It was a well thought out plot. And it was just like one of those, I wish I had a little less of the sister, even though I know the abortion plot was important to the political climate of today and what's going on today. But it's so important that I needed half the book for it. Like, I still needed another third of this book dedicated to what was going up on the space station and whether or not this person on the space station was actually having second thoughts. Because you don't go from being a religious zealot to deciding to give up everything without a lot of introspection or whatever. And we just never had that character progression with that person who ended up being super important that, you know, we never saw outside of some diary entries. And, you know, Welga, you know, made like some really rapid fire character changes as well that weren't set up because we're spending way too much time with the sister. So I just kind of wish it had a little more to it, I guess. So like 3.5 out of 5. But once again, it's very, very dense. It's really not a book, unless you're really into harder science fiction, it's not a book that I'm going to recommend if you like, I don't know, Star Trek or Star Wars type of thing. This is definitely a more Asimov, not quite as dry type of science fiction. Alright, so we opened up with 2 cozy mysteries that are fantasy, practical magic meets Lillian Jackson Braun. Really fun, dealing with, you know, her grief and solving murders, yay, without thriller aspects. So 5 out of 5 for both of those. 3.5 ginger snaps for Axioms, and just because I didn't know what type of book it wanted to be, and I felt a little weird about the whole human and alien relationship in the latter half because it just felt way too romantic for me. I was hoping, you know, I was thinking more, it probably would have come off better if it had been more platonic. And then 3 books by Becky Chambers, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, a slice of life science fiction where the plot arcs, the whole plot part of the story plays out really well, but the character arcs needed a little more work, so 4.5 out of 5. A Closed and Common Orbit, 5 out of 5. Both the plot and the character arcs were really tight. I really enjoyed it, but still, once again, slice of life fantasy. A Psalm the Wild Built, once again, 5 out of 5. Really talking about purpose versus spark and who comforts the comforter. Really kind of little enjoyable thing to read. Definitely would pick up the second one. And then lastly, Machine Hood, another 3.5 out of 5. Very dense read. Lots of talk of artificial intelligence, and there is some action in there, but it didn't feel satisfying because the whole ending was rushed, and we had a point of view that never shows up in your summary, which is if you have a summary and your point of view doesn't show, and you have an entire half of book dedicated to a single character and they don't show up in the summary at all, it usually means that character probably could have been cut from the book. So it just felt like we needed yet another point of view from the person up on the spaceship platform who was, you know, behind everything to give us that kind of satisfactory ending. I mean, the whole world and the whole hard aspect was set up, but it kind of wanted to be upmarket fiction, which is character meets plot, but the character arcs weren't fleshed out enough for it to work. Unfortunate. So thank you for listening. I hope some of those sound enjoyable to you. Please patronize your local library. Take care, my lovelies. Bless, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video where we're going to discuss more books.